assassinations, okay? And as a result, they have a tendency toward personal gratification, personal growth and fulfillment, team approach, team participation, optimism, and involvement. And their tendency is to avoid rocking the boat, okay? Avoid rocking the boat, keep us together, okay? Then after those are the Gen Xers, born in the 60s and 70s. They experienced the fall of the Berlin Wall, Watergate, women's lib, extensive divorce rates, energy crisis. As a result, you can count on a Gen Xer, and all of these are Gen Xers, by the way, if I've done my homework correctly. These folks are self-reliant. They value fun and informality. They value diversity. They're technically literate. And they tend to be a little bit cynical from time to time, okay? And their tendency really in an organization is not to go along, so that when the leader says this way, they're thinking, well, what about that way? What about that way instead? Now, the youngest generation, the millennials, and the millennials are also called Gen Ys, they're called Nexters, they're also called in some literature the tethered generation. They've experienced Oklahoma City, school shootings, technology development, a focus on the child and them as the child, and things like the Clinton impeachment, which might tend to dent your credibility factor as far as things. Now, as a result, they believe in programming and everything being programmed. They tend to be optimistic. They believe in civic duty. They're confident. And they're achievement-oriented. And they respect diversity. And they expect a lot. They expect a lot of the people around them because as they've grown up, they've been given a lot. Okay? So, with that overview of the generations that are out there, I've asked the panelists, and they've actually agreed to address three separate questions that I'm going to ask each of them to address these questions. First of all, is as they are in the business of acquiring new employees, whether they're young or old, what are 2 or 3 characteristics that they're looking for in those new employees? Then, as they actually meet these prospective employees, these candidates, what are they finding? How is the match between what they're looking for and what these candidates are receiving? And then third, what do they sense is being done in their organization to both attract and retain a spectrum of employees that run across those generations? So I'd like to ask Tracy Dunn, first of all, would you please address those questions for us?
Certainly, I'm happy to. Well, one of the things we do at Timken when it comes to determining the characteristics of what we're looking for in new talent, regardless of the generation in which they're coming from, is we start with the work. So we focus on the work that has to be done, and then we back that up to understand what are those competencies or characteristics that are required to do that work. And so as we go through that process, we have found that those characteristics and competencies differ a little bit depending on the generation in some cases, but mostly depending on the level of that particular person within the organization. So as I was mentioning, because those standards of performance, because of the work that has to be done, how that differs at the entry level versus a manager versus a manager of others and onward through the organization, we then approach the interview process a little bit differently. So when I think about the entry level, I think about the millennials, these folks that we're looking to bring in straight out of college into some of our developmental programs. When we look at the work that has to be done, it's a little more tactical, it's a little more more entry level in the sense of the word. And because of that, we roll back to competencies that center around, are they a team player? Do they have a strong amount of learning agility? Because when they're coming in that entry level point, it's definitely an opportunity to be trained and developed and to learn about the particular role that they are coming in to do. So the characteristics that we then look for based on the work rolled up to those competencies, those characteristics, particularly at the entry level, are around how involved are they? We look at their leadership activities. Are they just going to school, or are they involved in organizations, student organizations? And then we take it a step further. Are they just involved, or are they taking on leadership roles within those organizations? Because if we look at one of those competencies that spans all the generations and that spans all the different levels of work, it's leadership, and it's the ability to lead, and we all within the organization, regardless of our position, have a responsibility to lead. So one of the key characteristics that we look for at the entry level with millennials all the way up the organization is their ability to demonstrate their capability to lead. Obviously, academic qualifications are key at the entry level. And then a key component is interest and understanding in the work, because we are living in a day and age now where there's a ton of competition. In fact, we call it a war for talent right now. And so we want to ensure that the individuals that we are seeking clearly understand the role in which they are applying, and that they've made a connection between either their major, their previous career, or their aspirations in terms of their career. So if I were to sum it up, it's difficult to say 2 or 3 because it really depends on the work that they're doing within the organization and the competencies required to do that work. But some that transcend generations, I would have to say, would be leadership, their ability to demonstrate their capability to lead. It would also be learning agility, their willingness to learn and their willingness to grow regardless of their level in the organization, and teamwork, because we can't work in isolation within our organization. We have to depend on others, not only across the hall on Duber Avenue, but in Wuxi, China, in Bangalore, India, all across the world. So it's critical that those competencies and those skills are being brought to the table when we're seeking employees. So I'll move on to the second question that you posed.
What are you finding out there?
I know, exactly. I made all these notes, and I haven't really said anything that I said I was going to say. But the second question, and really kind of looking at our actual experience, it's been interesting, I should say. I've been in the role leading talent acquisition actually for just 6 months. I've been with Temkin for a year, and what our focus is about, and you have to remember that I wear 2 hats. I wear a talent acquisition hat, so I'm out trying to find talent for the organization, but I also wear a global inclusion hat, and that's about the culture transformation to ensure that mix we're bringing into the organization, to ensure we have the type of culture that will enable that mix to work. So when I think about some of the challenges and really relating to our actual experiences, it's understanding that what we're really trying to do here is to build a pipeline of diverse talent to fill the knowledge gaps that we have and that we will have. We have a ton of individuals that are about 3 to 5 years from retirement. Doesn't mean they're going to retire, but it means that they're eligible for retirement. And as you look at manufacturing, as you look at a lot of industries over the years, in the 80s things slumped down a little. We weren't actively recruiting, weren't as aggressive in recruiting. So what we have today is we have a large pool of individuals that have 20+ years of experience. We've got a lull in the middle, and then we've got a large pool of individuals with less than 5 years of experience. So what we are facing is truly a crisis. So as these folks eligible for retirement decide to retire, we've got a gap in knowledge that has to be filled. And so our experience and our challenges in this area, and I'll speak first to the millennial generation, is that when you hear the research and you hear the information about that millennial generation, you'll typically get one of two responses. One, those are just some spoiled brats that just want everything given to them and they're just out of control. The other end of that continuum is that this group of talent brings something very unique to the workplace, and they bring something that we need. When you break it down to the simplest form, there's a gap, and we're going to have huge opportunities. I believe the Bureau of Labor Statistics